We're shifting gears a little bit this morning. We're going from a touch with purpose to a serve with purpose. And you may have noticed a few people wearing these T-shirts this morning called Live Generously. And I've kind of gotten a few comments, well, where's our T-shirts? Well, so here's the deal. Thrivent is this organization that has been very active in the Lutheran Church across the years to help support different projects. And so we got a small sponsorship from them to do the day of service that we're going to do, which meant they kicked in like a couple $100, and they're willing to give 25 T-shirts, right? Well, we have a couple hundred people that are going to be serving, so it's kind of hard to, well, Jesus multiplied bread and fish, but I couldn't multiply 25 T-shirts. And you had to pre-order them, and so I didn't know the size of the people that were needing them, so everything was large or extra large. So the people that are wearing them are primarily like staff and lay ministers, but there's a couple other people that are wearing them because just like at the Rangers game and stuff where they've got those air guns and shoot out shirts, for those who are listening today, I mean, that are really paying attention, you may be able to get a free T-shirt today that says, Live Generously. Of course, they're only extra larges, okay? But I'll bring out the air gun at the end of the message for those who are really following it today. So we're doing the Serve with Purpose, and so the thought behind it is this. Serve with Purpose is going to take us up to our day of service. Now, the sermon series that we did before, A Touch with Purpose, John and I walked you through these different stories in the Bible in which God, with great intentionality, intersected people's lives and touched them with a specific purpose in mind. And I really hope that as you heard that series, you are able to identify those times in your life. We have this amazing God who knows us individually by name. I hope that you are able to think of times in which God has intersected your life and touched you for a specific purpose. And then when that happens, that's great, but the question that has to be asked is, what should become of that? I mean, is it great that God touches us and then we just kind of keep it for ourselves? I don't think so. I think it's like, when you're in a room full of people and someone pulls out a great big bag of M&Ms. I mean, it's rude to keep those M&Ms for yourself. You got to share them with the people around you, right? So as God has touched us with purpose, then He calls for us to touch other people with purpose. And really, one of the ways that we can do it, the best way that we can do it, is by serving people. You know what? I'm reminded all the time, certainly normally around the holidays, but a lot recently, that there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of suffering out there in people's lives. And God gives us this ability. God gives all of us in here physical, emotional, and spiritual gifts and abilities and storehouses so that we can take that to people who are hurting and to make a difference in their lives. And really the question is are you willing to do it? Are you willing to take time out of your day to touch people by serving them with purpose? I have a video that I wanted to share with you this morning. It's a really difficult video. How many of you remember this took place this past summer? But it was horrible hearing about it. But there's this man who drowned in Florida while there were some teenagers that were watching and just videotaping it. Do you guys remember that story? A few of you do. And I knew most of you didn't. So here's the deal. I'm not going to show you. There's video of it. I'm not going to show you the video because it's frankly disturbing. But because it plays into how I want to take the rest of this message, I want to show you the news report that talked about this event that took place in Florida this past summer. But I'm here to tell you it's a difficult subject. And so it's a newscast that was broadcast on the public airwaves. I wouldn't have problems with my children, even my younger children, seeing it. It's just a news broadcast, but of a very difficult subject. So if you're not comfortable with that with your children, I want to give you 20 or 30 seconds before I play the video because it's a very intense subject. Can we wait 20 seconds? That was a quick 20 seconds. All right. Go for it. Thanks, Dylan.
5 teenagers standing on the shore of a Florida lake mocking and cursing a man drowning and crying out for help. 4 days later, police officers in Cocoa pulled the body of Jamel Dunn from the water. That video has many asking the question, shouldn't the teens have jumped in to help instead of recording their taunts on a cell phone? Peter Bernard is on the night beat in Clearwater with the story. And Peter, you discovered the law in Florida is very clear on this. What they did may be cruel, but it's not criminal.
Yeah, and some are thinking that law needs to be changed. Let's say you come upon someone who's drowning in a lake, another body of water like I have behind me. Morally, you feel like you should jump in and help. But guess what? The law says you don't have to.
We not finna help your You finna down there.
Bro, drowning, what the heck?
July 9th in Cocoa, Florida, 5 teens notice a man pleading for help in the middle of a lake.
Y'all don't understand.
One of them continues to record as the man, later identified as Jamel Dunn, flails in vain to stay afloat.
Laughed at him, told him that they weren't going to help him, they weren't going to rescue him.
4 days later, police recovered his body.
The outrage that everyone feels is you feel like there should be severe penalties.
Well-known Clearwater criminal defense attorney Roger Futerman watched the video. He tells me while most would agree you should have to help, he says the law doesn't require that.
There's really no law in Florida that makes you have a duty to render aid.
The victim's fiance is furious.
How could nothing in your heart tell you not to do anything when someone's crying out for help?
But the teens aren't off the hook. They're being charged with an obscure misdemeanor.
But they had an immediate duty to know, to let someone know, law enforcement or a treating physician, that, hey, that we just saw the death.
Cold, callous, reprehensible, all of the above.
In this case, if they'd have gone in there, they could have saved this boy's life.
And oddly enough, there's an exception to the rule. Roger Futerman told me about this. If an owner of a boat or a ship comes upon somebody who needs help, they have to help them. It's the maritime law that kicks in. It's a federal law. But if you're standing on dry land, it doesn't apply. Keith?
Now, those boys are going to have to live with that the rest of their lives, though.
I have to tell you, when I was thinking about this story as I was working through this message this past week, I wanted to watch the video of that they recorded it to try to put myself in the mind of someone who's not willing to do anything when someone was sitting there drowning. And I have to tell you, I couldn't do it. It was like a little over a 3-minute video, if I remember. And after like 2 minutes of it, I had to click it off. It was so disturbing to me that it was creating some emotions and some anger inside me and stuff that I didn't even know how to process. I couldn't sit there and watch it. Now, here's the deal. Why am I showing this? I know that there's not one of us in here this morning that would ever sit there and just watch someone drown, let alone, be mocking it and calling it out, or, just sitting there recording it on our phone. In fact, these guys didn't even call the police. It was 4 days. This guy had been missing for like 4 days before they found him, and then it came out that these teens that were smoking weed were sitting there watching the whole thing and recording it. And even though all of us in here would have either immediately jumped in and tried to help that man, or at least if we weren't comfortable doing something like that, calling 911 immediately, I want to change the scenario just a little bit. In many ways, that pond is, it's kind of life. It's kind of the swamp of despair, the swamp of life that many people are kind of drowning in. And spiritually speaking, there are people in our lives, people that we know that are dying today apart from a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. And we're just kind of sitting back and not doing anything about it. We would never, ever, ever for a second sit there and watch someone physically drown. We would be in that water doing everything that we can to rescue them. But there's something about not seeing it in the physical when it happens in the spiritual that we are okay to allow that to happen and not do anything about it. In fact, then to take it even a step further, as he's struggling in that pond, there's people in this swamp of despair that is sometimes that way that we call life. There's people that are struggling. They're struggling emotionally. They're struggling mentally. They're struggling physically. They're struggling spiritually. You name it. They're struggling in many ways, and we're not sitting back there mocking them, but we're not doing anything to help them in the midst of their struggling. This concept of serve with purpose is that by going out and helping those people who are struggling in the swamp of life, right? By helping those who are struggling in their own whatever you want to call it, whether it be a health crisis, emotional, mental, whatever, by going in and serving them, by going in and helping them, that's a bridge. That's an avenue by which we can also bring the message of Christ into their lives. I don't know if that guy that drowned in that physical body of water, if he was drowning in a spiritual one as well, but I do suspect this: if someone had jumped in there to save him, physically, that would have opened a door to also save him spiritually if he was not already. You know, as difficult as that story is to watch, when Jesus walked this earth, he shared with a story that was every bit as difficult. It's a story that has come to be synonymous with helping people that we don't know. We've all heard the term Good Samaritan, right? I think they referred to it on this video. A Good Samaritan is someone who's willing to help another that they don't know, willing to help a stranger. Jesus, when he walked this earth, he told the story of the Samaritan, and it's a story that is every bit as disturbing as what we just watched on TV. And I want to share it with you this morning from Luke chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. Now, on one occasion, there was this expert of the law, and he stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Well, what's written in the law?" Jesus replied, "and how do you read it?" He answered, "Well, love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all your soul, and with all of your strength, and with all of your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this, and you will live." But you see, the expert of the law, he was really just trying to justify himself before God. So he asked Jesus, "Who's my neighbor?" And this Jesus replied, "There's a man that was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. And he was attacked by robbers, and they stripped him of his clothes, and they beat him, and they went away, leaving him for half dead. Now a priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he simply passed to the other side. So to this Levite, he came to that place, and he saw him, and he passed on the other side as well. But there's a Samaritan. And as he traveled, he came where the man was, and he saw him, and he took pity on him. And he went to him, and he bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and then he put the man on his own donkey and brought him to an inn, and he took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, and he gave them to the innkeeper, and he said, "Look after him," he said, "and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense that you may have." Which of these 3, Jesus says, do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert of the law replied, "Well, the one who had mercy on him." And Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." First of all, as I share with you this story, and I was kind of looking to see what other people would say on this passage. What's funny is you hear some of the most popular sermons on this passage, it's all pastors standing up and saying, this isn't really about serving and helping anyone. It's about the fact that this expert of the law is trying to justify himself before God. You know, he's trying to make it where he's worthy of going to heaven. And you know what? That is what's going on here. The expert of the law is trying to make it look like, you know, he's worthy to get to heaven by his own works. But that doesn't mean that the illustration that Jesus gives isn't applicable. It is. We don't know if it really happened, or we don't know if this is just kind of a hypothetical story that Jesus made up. But Jesus tells the story. There's this priest, right? And there's this guy. Now, he's not drowning in a pond, but there's this guy that's been robbed. He's been beaten. He's bleeding. He certainly is going to die in his own right on that path under the elements if someone doesn't help. But there's this priest who comes, and he's just like looking at him, and you know, maybe he's busy, maybe he's got a priest meeting to go to, maybe there's some sacrificing to happen, I don't know. The Bible, Jesus doesn't tell us, but he just doesn't stop. And then there's this Levite, and Levites are kind of like assistants to the priest, so it's kind of like, you know, having a pastor, and now the elder just came by, right? And the elder's coming by, and he looks at that man, and he doesn't, you know, have time to stop, but yet this Samaritan does. And this is why I said this story is every bit as hard to stomach is that, because when Jesus said this, they would have all gasped at what Jesus said. because Samaritans were seen as being a lesser of a person. You see, there were Jews, but Samaritans they're half-breeds. They're a cross between a Jew and a non-Jew, and so they're sort of Jewish. They kind of believe in the same God, but they're not welcome, period, let alone to worship at the temple in Jerusalem, but they're not welcome. They're less of. It's kind of like me and my family. We grew up in a small German town. I got one grandpa that's 100% German. I got another grandpa that was 100% German. I got a grandma that was 100% German, and guess what? The one grandpa, he married a 100% Italian woman. And I'm here to tell you, like 70 years ago, whatever it was, that just wasn't done. And that wasn't looked favorably upon, and the descendants are a little less German, right? Same thing here. This is someone of a little less value. In fact, Jews thought so bad about Samaritans that there's a story where the Samaritan woman comes to Jesus and asks for a miracle or a favor. And you know what Jesus' response to the Samaritan woman was? He said, the Son of Man has come for the chosen nation, the lost sheep of Israel, not for dogs. You ever been called a dog before? Not a compliment. You know the lady's response? Yeah, but even dogs get some of the scraps that fall from the table. And Jesus says, and he lifts her up and he says, there's not such faith in all of Israel. Jesus wasn't looking down on this woman. He was playing into the stereotype that the Jews had. That is a class and the level that Samaritans were seeing. And Jesus is telling this story where basically, put it into the pond example, you got a pastor and an elder who are sitting there like watching this person drown, and the dude doing weed is the one that goes and rescues. This was offensive when Jesus told this story. Every bit as offensive as what the story is for you and I to see and to consider. Here's the deal. Even though God has touched us with purpose and he calls for us to serve with purpose, the reality is there's many different things that get in the way. And there's many reasons why we become like the priest, that we become like the Levite, that we don't take time to help the person who's sitting there and in need on the side of the road. What are some of the reasons that keep us from serving with purpose when God calls for us to do it? I want to just share with you maybe things that might apply to you. The first is this. Sometimes we don't serve people and people's needs because we don't like them. And I have to tell you, I can't stand helping people I don't like. And before you judge me, you know you can't either. Yeah. I mean, in the end, I probably will help someone I don't like, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to complain the whole time about it, right? And so there's people in this world that we don't like. We sometimes don't like people because of personality clashes, but sometimes it's even more shameful than that. Sometimes we don't like people because of race. You can have a black person say, I'm not going to help that person because he's white. And you're going to have a white person that says, I ain't going to help them because they're black. Sometimes it's a social status that causes us to not like people, want to help people. You'll have rich people that will say, you know what, I'm not going to help that poor person because the reason they're poor is because they're not responsible and they haven't done this and that and they deserve to be. And you're going to have a poor person say when there's a rich person in need, why should I help them? They've got their money. They can help themselves. And now we're even in a time in our country where we're starting to hate people politically, right? Republican won't help a Democrat, and a Democrat won't help a Republican. And you think I'm joking? How many of you have defriended someone on Facebook in the last year or so because of their political views? No, seriously, come on, how many of you have? Let's be honest. The rest of you are lying. You've at least silenced them where you don't see the posts. And I'm here to tell you, if they annoyed you enough, you will pass down that road and see them with a flat tire, and you'll be like, ha, ha, ha. You will. But you and I know that just because we don't like someone, it's not a reason why we shouldn't help someone who is in need. Sometimes we don't help people who are in need because sometimes we think that they're deserving to be in that situation. And I have to tell you, I do struggle with this one as well. Sometimes people's inability to manage their money, sometimes people's laziness, sometimes because of things, we can sit there and think that, you know what, they're there and I'm not going to help them, and they deserve to be there. And here's where we got to be careful on this one. I mean, Jesus says, if you don't work, neither shall you eat. So there is an element of personal responsibility that needs to be weighed in all of this, but that doesn't mean that you don't give someone a chance that maybe doesn't deserve it. We should. In fact, isn't that what Scripture says of us? That while we were still sinners, Christ came into this world to redeem the world. It didn't say, well, once they got their junk together, once they figured it out, once they were kind of moving along the right path, Christ came to the world. But in fact, when we didn't deserve it, while we were sinners, Christ Jesus came into this world to rescue and to redeem us. So even when other people are not deserving of our help, we owe it to at least help them and try to get them out of that situation that they're in. Sometimes we're kind of like the priest and the Levite because sometimes we're just too busy to help people. I don't know about you guys, but I'm always like trying to get a million things done in a day, and where I really recognize I do this is when I'm driving down the street, I'll see a car broken down, and as I'm pulling up on it, I'm thinking I should stop, and I'm thinking I don't have time, and I go. But the further away that I get from that situation, the more I'm feeling bad about it. So inevitably, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to go back and say, hey, do you need any help? Is everything okay? We all recognize that happens sometimes in life, but I'm here to tell you that it's my bet that the busyness in life prevents us from even seeing the need that's out there. Part of me wants to say, in fact, I'm going to say it, but I'm not asking for you to respond. What I wanted to ask you this morning is, when is the last time you saw someone in need of help? And I want you to think about that for a second, seriously. This isn't like, just give the pastor the answer that he wants. When is the last time you've seen someone in need of help? And if I said, how many of you saw someone in help today, most of us in here wouldn't be able to raise our hands. In fact, if I said, how many of you have seen someone that needed help in the last 2 days, we couldn't think of someone. I mean, if I'm thinking of this in my life, I mean, you got to get into the weeks, into the months where you just thought of someone that needed help and whether or not you helped them or not. But here's the deal. When we talk about the hurt that's out there, people that are hurting emotionally, people that are hurting physically, people that are hurting spiritually, people that are hurting financially, people that are hurting in all these different ways, there's probably not a day in our lives, there's probably very few hours in our lives where we're not coming across people that are needing something from us, from that bank and that reservoir of spiritual, emotional, financial, or whatever, to be able to help people who are in need, to touch them and to serve them with purpose. It's just, life is so busy. We don't take time. People make the comment. It's like, how's everything? Oh, yeah, it's fine. Okay. And we don't, we don't take the time to dig into that more because we're just too busy. And then the last excuse that I think prevents many of us from stopping on the road, as the priest and the Levite did, is sometimes getting involved in people's lives are just messy. I don't know about you guys, but I hate messiness. I hate the dysfunction of life, and I don't really want to be a part of it. And even more than that, I can't stand helping someone that doesn't appreciate it. Is there any of us in here that really enjoys helping people who don't appreciate it? There's nothing. I can't tell you the number of times I've grumbled after helping someone thinking they didn't even appreciate that. I want to share with you one more story. This is also from Florida. I don't know what's going on in Florida these days, but this is from this past summer. But this is a crazy story. It's a news article. I'm going to read it to you. So there's this Good Samaritan was mistaken for a kidnapper and was beaten by the parents in a Florida park after trying to help a lost toddler, police said. The 2-year-old had become separated from her parents during a softball game on Saturday at Southwest Sports Complex in Lakeland and was spotted by a man at the park with his friends, according to the police incident report published Sunday. Believing this child was lost, the man asked the child where her parents were and walked around the premises with the hopes that she could point them out. But when the child's father was alerted to the bystanders that his daughter was being led away by a stranger, the well-intentioned act was mistaken for a kidnapping attempt. I saw this man with my daughter in his hands walking towards the parking lot. What would you do? The father told the NBC affiliate. I wanted to kill him. Thinking they were stopping a crime, the father and 2 friends approached the stranger And as his friends took the toddler away, the father punched the Good Samaritan probably 5 or 6 times, he told WFLA. I thought he was trying to take my daughter, the protective dad told the station. In a 911 call released to the media, the mother also admits to hitting the man who was with her daughter and says she did not immediately believe the incident was simply a misunderstanding. Lakeland police, on the other hand, said that they were confident that the man was just trying to help the girl. An independent witness who didn't know the family or anyone else there at the park saw him pointing out different males saying, "Is that your father?" Lakeland Police Sergeant Gary Gross said in an interview with WFLA. Police also said the Good Samaritan had no prior criminal history and that they were able to verify that he had been at the park with friends. It's understandable how parents can possibly be upset in a situation involving a lost child. However, this incident truly involved a Good Samaritan trying to help a lost child find their parents, the police report read. Despite the man's innocence, several posts were published on social media defaming this man's character. Family and friends of the toddlers also posted the man's name, the man's photo, the man's place of employment online, and called him a child predator. No charges have been filed against the parents. When contacted by WFLA, the Good Samaritan declined to comment, citing concerns, telling reporters that he had to leave town with his family. The guy is a father, a local businessman. He has 2 children, and he was trying to help this child, and they turned it completely around, the police sergeant said. And that's not right. Still, when asked whether he believed the man's innocence, the child's father said, "No, blank no." "I don't," he said over the phone, "not at all." This protective dad, as the newspaper reports, so protective that he allows his 2-year-old child to go wandering off during a softball game and doesn't even notice it. When a Good Samaritan comes and is picking up the child saying, "Is that your daddy? Is that your daddy? Is that your daddy?" He comes and, him and his buddy start beating this guy up. And not only that, even when the police clear him and say he was just trying to help because of what other witnesses observed, they go on social media and they ruin this guy's life. That's why I don't like helping. Actually, I like helping people, but if I don't like helping people, that would be a reason. For one, I don't want to get into the messiness of some people's messed up lives. And 2, I can't stand helping people who are unappreciative. But is that a reason not to serve? In fact, there's this whole religious thing, right? That God sent his son, Jesus Christ, into the cross. And even the people Jesus was coming to redeem and to forgive, they were spitting on him and they were mocking him and they were shoving a crown of thorns in his skull. And we're as unappreciative as you could possibly be. And what was Jesus' words? "Father, forgive them, because they don't know what it is that they're doing." And don't you and I do that? God's come into our lives and he's redeemed us. God has come into our lives and he's given us all these things. We wouldn't be breathing. We wouldn't be standing here. The sun wouldn't be in place. Nothing would be going on right now in our lives for the good. It would all just be gone in a second if it wasn't the graciousness of God who gives it to us as a gift. Yet when things start going on and bad and wrong in our lives, we start shaking our fists to God, don't we? Why did you allow this? Why did you allow that? If you were really God, you wouldn't this and wouldn't that. Yet God still, even in the midst of our own unappreciativeness, helps us. So we gather here to kick off this new series and to consider serving with purpose. What are we going to do? I think Christ really allows us these opportunities to come into people's lives by helping them. Are you going to let one of these excuses keep you from doing it? Are you going to be like in the video, those people that are sitting back just watching that person drown, maybe not drowning physically, but drowning spiritually and drowning in the swamp of despair of all the hurt and the pain that goes on in life? Are you willing to jump into the pond and help them? Are you willing to jump in the pond and touch them and to serve them with the purpose of being a bridge into their lives to hopefully bring Christ to them? Scripture tells us, Jesus tells us, let your light, let your good deeds so shine before men, that they might see those good deeds and they might bring glory to God in heaven. We're surrounded by people that are drowning in the pond of life spiritually. My encouragement to us as a congregation is to let your light so shine before others so that God might get the glory and that people might come to know Him. Here's the deal, and I'm going to say this over the next 4 weeks because it's something I'm passionate about and it's a pet peeve of mine. People are like, Pastor, we need to be more of a serving church. If you really believe that we need to be a more serving church, then get out there and serve. Because I'm here to tell you this building's not the church, and Pastor Greg, when he's going out and doing stuff, they ain't the church. You're the church. If you want to see the church be a serving church, get out there and start serving. And then you know what? We're going to be a serving church when we do that. And it's what God has called us to do and be. That's why on October 28th, after a few of these messages, we're going to kind of culminate it in this congregational-wide day of service. It's everything that it really shouldn't be about. It shouldn't be about the congregation doing it. It should be about the individuals. But as a congregation, individually, we are going to go out at the same time, and we're going to do it. When I came up this morning, there's just like 5 spots left. And here's the deal, we probably have about 500 to 700 people that are connected with this congregation. Average worship about 350 on a Sunday. I think we have about maybe 200 or so that are kind of on those sheets. So if there's like maybe 600 to 700 people associated with the congregation, there's a lot of room for some more people to step up and serve. But here's the problem. We only had like 4 spots left. I mean, you guys have filled it up. Praise God for that. But you know what? You can also be a part of this serving if you just go out and serve the food bank that weekend. And if you do, let us know about it because we want to include it in the festivities of everything that we're doing. I was talking with a buddy before service. He's doing something through BNSF, and he was saying that they need volunteers for something going on that weekend. And I'm like, well, if I get more names, I'll let you know because it doesn't have to be. This isn't about light of the world. It's about going and serving in the community. So what I've done this morning is I put a sheet out there that if those 5 spots that are left aren't at a time or it doesn't really work for you, there's a sheet where you can put your name that, hey, I'm willing to serve. I missed out or I haven't found a group yet or whatever, and I'll try to get you to plugged in. And then as part of that, I'm also trying to build a culture of serving within the congregation. And I got to survey you. I got to inconvenience you a little bit. So there's surveys out there already for you. If you're already signed up for serving on October 28th, if you don't mind, before you leave today, go fill out a survey. It's like 6 questions long. And you're going to fill out that survey, and you're going to turn it in, and we're going to just check off your name so we can make sure that we have surveys. You're going to do that in the next couple weeks. You're going to do it immediately after you serve, and then a month after you serve, and then the rest of it becomes kind of what I do with it. So if you're not a part of October 28th going out and serving that weekend, please do. And if you're looking for a group, put your name down. I'll find your group. Now, with that being said, it's time for the air gun. And first of all, this gentleman back here is leading a group, and I know he doesn't have a shirt, so he gets a shirt. So that means that someone over here gets a shirt, and then someone over here gets a shirt, and I'm 1 shirt left short. So let me see if I got, I got another shirt. So blindly, here we go, air gun. Make no noise for me, go ahead. Oh man, I fired a blank, but Donna, that looks like that is your shirt. So I encourage all of you, live generously and be a part of this wonderful weekend of service. At this time, we want to celebrate something else going on. Let's see the Bob Smiley video.